seem really fitting. Time signatures and music. These are difficult times.
Okay. Well, I was going to stream this to X as well, and I just got a message saying it requires a premium account. So
Um, that would have been exciting.
yeah. Well, we're also
Um,
streaming to oh, I can't even remember the name of the damn website. It's one that gamers used to use a lot for streaming, and
Twitch.
yeah, I think it's Twitch. No, I
There's
don't
a
know.
few.
What is it?
Um,
Uh, it is
I
Twitch.
gotta make
Yeah.
I gotta make sure that the Signs movie in the background isn't audible
All right.
because that'll totally get the video removed.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Well, while you do that, I am going to start reading Static Warp's letter. So I went to invite somebody to the stream today, and I just searched my inbox for the most recent email from him so I could reply to it, and I discovered one from last October that I'd never read. It was still in bold, so I knew I'd never opened it. But somebody that I had invited to be on this live stream, who I'm thinking didn't get the invitation because I sent it to, well, I just responded to his email, and I think he was writing from one he doesn't check all the time. But somebody who is known to CROM listeners, most likely, is Static Warp Shell. And he wrote, "Hi, KMO. Just listen to the C-Realm Vault 466 discussion, loosely focused around the possibility of another civil war in the USA. You mentioned in the video or podcast a while back that something about Tim Pool's delivery rubs you the wrong way. I agree, and I think I have figured out what it is, at least for me. Tim Pool presents himself as a journalist and social commentator. I've taken in enough of his material over the years that I can say for sure that he is both to some degree. But what he is first and foremost, and he mentions this much less often, is a businessman. His main business is selling infotainment media. I don't find him off-putting just because he's a businessman. I think what irks me is the fact that he knows the recommendation algorithms are destroying our culture, even does long screeds about this on a regular basis, but is still enslaved, but he still enslaves his content to them. All right. And oh, I see Benjamin has muted his mic. um
It should
where are
still be
we?
playing.
I don't find him off putting just because he's a businessman. I think what irks me is the fact that he knows the recommendation algorithms are destroying our culture, even does long screeds about this on a regular basis, but he still enslaves his content to them. This cynical approach to marketing his content on all social media platforms is successful for sure, but the fact that he knows how destructive it is and still does it, combined with the fact that he's a little bit of a douche, sets me slightly on edge when I listen to his videos. Evidence of this cynical approach is easy to find in his content. He often says things like, I did a video on Bud Light and it got lots of views, so here's another video on Bud Light. Hence, I'm pretty sure the only reason Tim Pool talks about the supposed inevitability of another civil war in the US is that his viewers love it, and thus the algorithm loves it. Which makes me wonder, which is the chicken and which is the egg? Why is it that paranoid content like this is so popular on social media? Tim Pool's take on this is that bad news is regarded as more important for evolutionary reasons. If someone comes up to you and tells you today is going to be rainbows and sunshine, there is not much of a psychological or physiological effect. If that same person came up to you and told you that there was an army of racist scumbags marching down the street to rape and kill your family, your whole body responds involuntarily, and you pay 100% attention to this potential threat. For days afterward, you would probably find worry over this possibility coming unbidden into your mind, and you crave new information about the threat. Knowing this, Tim keeps producing this kind of paranoid content. He knows his viewers are addicted to it, a completely cynical, business-like approach to the topics he covers. I know all this about Tim Pool because I enjoyed watching the Bud Light boycott controversy, and he probably produced more videos about it than anyone else. After watching all of his Bud Light videos, I continue to tune in to his new stuff on a fairly regular basis. Since there is not much else in the genre of daily casual infotainment on YouTube these days that I find tolerable. That fact in itself, and there is not much interesting infotainment in my YouTube feed, ties back to the problem with algorithmic recommendations. If I had to pick a single thing that I think is pushing people further into the sort of paranoid nihilism that leads them to warlike activity, it is the proprietary secret algorithms that select what people view. It's easy to verify the dark side of this technology. You've noticed in the past that if you go to a fresh Roku TV and watch a single rising video on YouTube, even while signed out, the recommended video feed will immediately populate with Fox News and all manner of right-wing content. Watch any of these videos and you'll keep getting content that pushes further and further right, and not just right, but what I can only describe as down. I ran this experiment recently, and within days I was getting recommendations for lame goons like Gavin McInnes and Anthony Cumia, whom I've never heard of. Not to mention wading through all of the insane doomsday fantasy videos about the market crash that is definitely happening tomorrow, people freaking out about the trans issue, etc. My girlfriend mentioned that the same thing happened to her with Judeo-Christian content. She started off watching Jewish housewives talk about the banal details of their kosher households, videos about Christian theology and meditation, stuff like that. Within days, the recommendation feed was 100% doomsday prophecy and flat earth videos. Apparently any topic, no matter how mundane, has a dark side on YouTube. So I decided to do another experiment. I used the not interested, don't like this video, and don't recommend channel options on every single video I didn't want to see. Everything that was pushing right and down. I did this for a few weeks. At first, the algorithm kept trying to push more of the same shit in front of me. Then something weird happened. It gave up. It stopped recommending anything new to me at all. Instead, populating the recommended feed with things I had already watched, or older videos from a few channels I hadn't told it I hated. I find it very strange that the YouTube algorithm is designed such that it will only take you further into the darkness, and if you tell it you don't want to go there, it will simply give up and wait for you to pick another topic. I don't think this is coincidental. Social media companies know that disturbing content increases engagement. I'm sure the TikTok and Instagram algorithms are even more destructive than the one YouTube uses. Some common sense regulation could take care of this problem, but so few people have caught on that this is even a problem at all that no one in the electorate is demanding such legislation. With this in mind, it's easy to see why things are getting worse in the socio-political sphere in the US. Most people simply don't have the mental tools to resist this kind of programming, or even be aware that it is happening to them. I personally think we are already in the midst of the Second American Civil War, and have been since Occupy ended back in 2012. This is when the late 20th century war of the elite against the masses was won. It's about this time that essentially everyone in the US had a smartphone, the social media addiction that comes with it, and the escalating narcissism that social media causes. Since then, the cynical use of recommendation algorithms along with intense distribution of propaganda about social justice, race, and oppression have put a significant number of people in the US into a state of total paranoid delusion. The bureaucratic state, which appreciates this effortless division of the electorate, is not immune to these predations. The initial shock of the 45th president's election quickly culminated into a full-blown regime change operation, followed by a clumsy attempt to change the outcome of the 46th election, and a declaration of a large swath of the U.S. population as domestic terrorists. As at this point, not only are the people at war with each other, the state is at war with the people. But it's not a sexy war, a hot war. War just doesn't look like it did back in the 19th century. Since most of the fighting can be done from behind a screen, why bother going out and putting yourself in harm's way? Things will have to get way worse before any significant number of combatants see that as the best possible method of handling things. I say significant number because there are already small groups of people coalescing into militia-like bands, and they have been conducting offensive operations in plain view of the state and media for years now. Antifa is the most well-known example. The BLM riots and teen takeovers are a more chaotic, less disciplined instance of this organized cultural infighting. The Red Team has its militias as well, and strangely enough, the state is also organizing civilian militias such as Patriot Front. It seems there is a blue team, a red team, and a third colorless team representing the authoritarian state, which opposes both civilian groups. Civil war is well underway in the U.S. There are few, if any, uniformed combatants. There has been no open declaration of war by any side, but it's definitely happening. Hope you found this feedback interesting or useful in some way. Thanks, Static Warp. All right, so I need to rest my voice for a second and get a drink of water, so let me have you comment on that.
Sure. Um, yeah, hopefully the movie in the background doesn't get loud at any point, but it's mostly quiet enough. It shouldn't be an issue. I didn't know. I must have distracted myself when I started reading that email. Um, I started I usually start writing something when it's in my head before I lose it. I didn't know he had a lot more in that email. I'd be curious to know how much he watches Tim Pool. Did he say semi-regularly or something like that? Oh, you're muted.
I got the impression that he watches Tim Pool pretty regularly,
Okay. Yeah.
or at least
Um,
listens.
I don't get the sense that he's um sprinting full bore into the rabid culture war stuff. He definitely profits from it though, and it's hard to know how much personally he's making that decision to talk about those things. Um, in my email response, I was saying that I do appreciate his humor a little bit, and I basically identify with him as a um, skateboarder libertarian type that I enjoyed being around when I was growing up. Um, he's 3 years older than me, so I will often put his stuff on if anything happens in the world. He's doing like 4 videos a day, including the 2.5 or 3 hour sit down thing at 8 p.m. to uh, late. So if it's that or breaking points that I try to even it out. But obviously that's not the best mix. Um, otherwise, I think that Ian in the show, he will say things or ask things a lot of times that I'm already thinking when I'm listening, and I appreciate that, but it's not enough, and it doesn't really go anywhere to make it appropriately speaking from all sides that I hear of. Um, because I wouldn't be proud to say I watched Tim cast. It's definitely like there's so much you can put it on. I put it on during my morning routine with like an earbud while I make my coffee, and pretty much a lot of the work. True, Ben, that is. um,
Breaking Points and Tim Pool, not the best
yeah,
mix.
and it's interesting. I used to when COVID started, I was like Breaking Points, which was the Hill, I think then
Mhm.
the Sagar and Crystal combo. I loved during COVID. For some reason, I've drifted more away to not agreeing with them as much, and it came to a head with RFK's endorsement of Trump. I was kind of excited about that, but I have a lot of good friends who are good people who are the opposite, where that's just a sign of his grifterness, RFK's grifterness. One guy was saying, who is a lawyer in town, um, that he had built his career kind of modeled after RFK. He's an environmental lawyer, and he was sounded heartbroken about it. So it's very confusing, but I tend to gravitate or be more comfortable around right-leaning minds than Democratic blues. I mean, I appreciate being able to talk about everything openly, and I find that you can't do that. Maybe that's because I've drifted um, to the right since COVID. So the foreground and the sentient being has moved, so it's hard to tell. I could say more about Tim Pool if you wanna. keep
Well,
resting your
let
voice.
me ask about you for a second.
Sure.
Um, how old are you?
I'm 35. Baby face though, so I look
So,
20-ish.
wow, 56. So,
Not a bad baby face.
yeah, the big
Got some red
cheeks.
cheeks going.
Yeah. Um, you are married. You have a young child. What is
Yes,
your?
actually,
Go ahead.
uh, 2 days ago was 10th wedding anniversary. So yeah, we have a 5-year-old. Um,
Congratulations.
yeah, I mean, I came from, and she came from a family, well, parents who stayed together the entire time. So we learned the basic functions of how you do that. And you don't even think about, oh, we're having an argument. Maybe I should try someone else. So it's not like I work hard on it, but it's just kind of normal. But yeah, I work with developmentally disabled. I got into that when I was going to school for psychology. I don't like some of the bureaucratic aspects of it, but that's almost everywhere you look. But I do have an almost unhealthy amount of patience for people, so it works for me.
An
Um,
unhealthy amount of patience.
yeah, I mean, my wife and I both try to push each other to be more not conflict averse, whatever the other term for that is. I made a longer one than it should have been there, but um, the way that the world has been going, even before I was big into um, climate change and what do you call that? Like a normie hater, I guess, where like everywhere you look, someone's like buying poison and you like resent them for their choices and all that. I was essentially a Democrat, I guess. The first thing I that got me into it that poked me was the 2008 crash. Um, I don't think you even finished asking your question. If you,
Well, my question was going to be, what is your like outside of the home? What is your social life like?
oh, the most interaction I did appreciate was a local chorus group. So that was once a week. We sing for 2 hours together, but we're working on learning content. Half of us don't know how to read music, but the teacher is amazing about helping people through that. And mostly each section, tenor, soprano, all that stuff, has someone who knows how to read music. So when you sit next to them, you basically you memorize it and then you look at the notes on the page. But so that I go shopping, and when I'm working, I'm with an individual helping in his apartment. We do Meals on Wheels, so that's pretty nice. Um, and then he has a job, so I'm helping him every now and then with that. Um, so it's yeah, I mean, I have a lot of human contact, but not rarely so much where like I'll do fire pits in the backyard and um, more in-depth conversations with family. Rarely as much with friends. There's some friends. It's harder to just schedule time with friends. And that's pretty much anyone married with a kid is like,
Yeah. You
unless you
end
have
up hanging
another,
out with other parents.
exactly. And we have
Yeah.
a family like that. So that was how it was growing up too. There was one family that we were always with twice a week. And yeah, it's easier to keep the house that's already a mess than go out to a restaurant and try to make sure they're not running somewhere.
Yeah.
So,
So you
oh,
say you're coming from basically being a Democrat, and it was largely COVID that sort of
yeah,
shattered that alliance or
it was
that
about
allegiance.
a 2-year process where it was
Don't worry about
it was
it.
it was the prosecution of people who defend themselves. I started paying attention to that once the Kyle Rittenhouse situation happened, which I felt bad for him. He looked like just a kid who didn't know what he was getting into. Um, but the amount of lies and maintained lies after that nauseated me. Even after more of the facts came out, I watched the almost the entire live stream of the court case. It was very educational in me for me that that along with my father-in-law helped me change my view on guns and the Second Amendment to where I used to think we should ban them all and get rid of them like Australia or some other places. But um, as well as the authoritarian like mandate mind that the source of our problems are other people, and that if those other people didn't make those choices and do those things, that the world would be a better place. So what we have to do is increase the power of the state to make things illegal that are bad and mandate things. I won't say the VACC, the health mandates in COVID, that pushed me away a lot because I have always been, I guess, a crunchy liberal, which is a term I heard that means like healthy, whole foods, grow as much food as you can, which is impossible, stay away from the processed things, and decentralization and things on a smaller scale. So, like RFK talked about in his recent speech, there, big ag, big everything. These are dangerous things. And it was just mind blowing that the left just dropped the ball on that one and is, I don't know. And the right has their issues too, but when you're saying that people who defend themselves should be prosecuted from people who are like the sacred victim, if they do violence, that's fine. If you respond with violence to defend yourself, you might go to jail. Yeah.
Well, let's stay there for a second. You used a term of
Sure.
arts, sacred victim. That's not one that's in my usual working vocabulary. So talk about that.
I forget where I heard that from. Might have been Jonathan Haidt. I think it was Jonathan Haidt because he talked about in moral foundations that no matter what group, um, humans will often something will become sacred or like mythologized, and with that, you're not allowed to talk or ask certain questions about. And I think, oh no, it was Michael Schellenberger, I think, added to it. He was saying with in California that the view is basically if someone's homeless, if they're addicted, if they had a horrible life, that yes, to a degree, that is not their fault and it made them who they are. But when it comes to them in the moment doing a behavior that's dangerous for themselves or someone else, um, I think that pretty much says it. My thoughts are kind of getting spinny here.
Well, I just did a quick search on the term, and I found something that I haven't read through yet, but it's pretty short. So I'm just going to read this. This is from the page Hertog Foundation, which I'm not familiar with. So they probably have some sort of slant. I don't know what it is. Suffering could make sacred. So it may be partly nature and not culture alone that leads us to apprehend a sacred aspect in victims of oppression. Those who recognize this sacredness show piety, a special form of respect toward members of oppressed groups. The result is a system of social constructions often dismissed as identity politics. This essay starts with an analysis of the intentionality of piety and sacredness and how they relate to suffering, sacrifice, sanctions, pollution, and purification. It then argues that the sacralization of oppressed groups is an expression of the perennial human disposition to acknowledge sacredness and to respond piously. The essay then analyzes this sacred status as socially constructed, based on the sacred making power of suffering. The sacred status elicits status elicits piety, gives its bearers special authority, surrounds them with sanctions, and calls for symbolic sacrificial punishments of the impious. By dissecting sacrificial politics as a system of social constructions, we see that, Although the oppressed groups are made sacred, certain people in the oppressor groups, the pious, continue to exercise fundamental power. This essay, by displaying the inner logic of this cultural phenomenon, helps us both to sympathize with and to critique the system, and then to pose questions about what good or bad the system might be doing. All right, so that apparently is like a précis. I don't know, some sort of introduction to an essay that does not appear on this same page. But I remember John Michael Greer doing a post many years ago about, I think he called it the victim game, where there's a social game of a victimized class, another class of people who are the oppressors, and then a third class of people who, make a show of coming to the rescue, but not necessarily the physical aid of the oppressed class. But for this game to continue, every member in the game, or every participant role, has to participate. And eventually what happens is that the what happens is that the people who are assigned the oppressor role, they just get sick of it and refuse to participate anymore. And so a new round starts again with probably a new victim class and a new perpetrator class, and with the the savior class being the same people, because they're the ones who get the most out of the game. Is that a wig in your lap?
It's a collection of hair that she can use to braid hair and stuff. There you go.
Oh,
All right, is signs over? I think I do remember listening to that at some point, though, from John Michael Greer.
all right. Well, I will keep talking. Parker's in the chat. Um, Parker says, well, let me just put it up on screen here. That makes sense. The text does sound academic. Yes, it does. It doesn't sound like the sort of thing I would normally read. Just for my own edification. I'm biased. I hear terms like problematic and other academic speak, and I just think there's going to be a whole lot more words on the page than are necessary to convey the desired meaning. Unless, of course, the meaning is just I'm an academic, and if you are reading this, then you are most likely either in my tribe or a wannabe pretender to my tribe. Either way, my status is assured. But I definitely favor sources of information that have a more straightforward and I would say colloquial, not necessarily colloquial, just clear, straightforward, and with no excess verbiage, just for social signaling. Although you could say that my preference for, spare prose is a type of social signaling. And fine. All right. Well, I'm the parent of grown children, so it is kind of a reminder of what it was like.
Yeah. I was wondering about asking you how your kids are doing, but you don't have to talk about that if you don't want to do it here.
Well, they are in Maryland and I'm in Arkansas, and I haven't seen them in a few years now. But I talked to him on the phone, and certainly my youngest is doing quite well. He started working before he even graduated from high school, and when he graduated, he got a better job, and yeah, he's doing pretty well.
Wow.
The other son, who is academically speaking, the more gifted of the two, he was in his first semester in college when COVID hit, and he dropped out, and he's been at his mother's house, is not doing much of anything as far as I know
Huh.
since then.
Shitty.
Yeah, well, I think
COVID
he's hardly
casualties.
unique.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I heard a little bit of talk about academic lingo and dialect or whatever. I used to be very much like try to use the biggest word as possible, and I have a similar disposition where I don't like it. It is off-putting, but it's because you get so used to people using that type of language to lie or you know.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes I'll take some piece of academic writing and I'll drop it into a large language model and I'll say translate this into English, And what it produces is invariably, you know, 1/3 to 1/2 the length of what I put in, because there's just so
Exactly.
much extraneous, you know, just jargon that doesn't really add anything other than the signaling of I'm the sort of person who uses this type of language.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I'm just typically not interested in those discussions. They seem to be, well, I mean, one, cis het, straight white, you know, Gen X dude just stepping in the door, I kind of feel the laser target, you know, laser sights, like, you know, finding their bead on me. Um, yeah, it's just an unproductive arena for exploration as far as I'm concerned. I tend to be like, I'm very into Substack these days. Most of what I'm consuming, you know, that's not on YouTube is on Substack.
Yeah. I think that that's been a nice addition. Before, when I was following you, there was more interspersed. Oh, here's a video there, but it's nice to see that's gotten you in a like a consistent rhythm,
Tuesday and Thursday.
pumping stuff out.
Yeah, you know, somebody who doesn't post very often, but who usually posts good stuff and a much bigger account says, "Yeah, I know it's been a while since I posted, um, but you know, I'm not going to post on a regular schedule if I don't have anything, and that's just noise posting." And I'm like, you know, it stuck with me because I know that I'm on a very rigid schedule. But if I just wait until I feel like writing something, I won't. You know, so if I give myself a deadline, then I will.
Yeah, so you kind of need both going on.
All right.
Just adding
So,
that book. Can't find it. Raising the Socially Successful Child.
uh,
I used to read obsessively, thinking I could figure out how to improve the world substantially, and it sort of stopped a little after COVID.
why do you think that is?
Um, I was reading about the evolution of the planet and the amount of death it has underwent. I think it was 7 mass extinctions or something. Um, and just learning the amazing ways that all of a sudden things change, and the oxygen death or whatever, before life figured out how to, um, was it oxygen or carbon, to eat it and even it
Oxygen.
out.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oxygen is a caustic substance. I mean, it turns, you know, it turns iron into rust.
yeah. It kills us, but it helps us slowly die.
Yeah, but we make good use of it in the meantime.
So it was just seeing how much, you know, things are out of our control. And um, I guess that helped level my head and step back and stop trying to figure out the answer to the universe. So, but I do still try to read history. William Hoagland's one of my favorite. He's on Twitter. I'm reading Whiskey. I just started Whiskey Rebellion, and the first one I got into, I was reading a lot about Native American and colonist interactions. Fascinating to me. Um, there was one. It's not Empire of the Summer Moon. Black Snake, and it was well, back up here. How did I get on that topic? William Hoagland.
Well,
Right. So I tried to read Whiskey Rebellion. I'm starting it now, but just the schedule now is harder. I used to um I used to fit it in, but I guess I got back into video games, which I didn't play for 10 years, pretty much.
oh,
I stopped. Yeah. Yeah, I played guitar in high school. I was in a band, and then when I started going to school for my bachelor's, as well as the band kind of tapering out, and I was making my own music, recording it. I switched to Pro Tools, which is substantially harder, and it just kind of cut my creativity juices when I would get on Google something for an hour to find out how to do something so simple that I could have done in GarageBand really easy. Um, Yeah, I didn't play guitar for like 7 years, and I've been playing guitar again, acoustically and singing while I play, which is fun for the past couple of years. So,
You know, I quit my Adobe subscription. Like it was a regular ritual to just be disgusted at how much I was paying and, you know, to go to quit and they'd give you the special offer. It's like, hey, how about 3 months for free while you think about it? So I would take that up. And this last time I was just like, no, I'm done with you people. I mean, I saw how much I had spent on their just paying the monthly ransom on the software over the years, and it was many thousands of dollars. I'm like, forget it.
well, they just changed the they're to accept. You have to accept the terms that allow them to go in your computer and look at your files, which legally give them the right to creative, like patentability on your own stuff. I think you shared that.
Yeah, it seems like they're looking to just collect data for AI training purposes, but the way
Oh,
the new terms were laid out, they didn't own your material, but they had the right to create derivative works based on it. And like I still have all their software on my computer because in order to uninstall the software, you have to accept those new terms of service. So
wait,
my
you have in
computer's
order to uninstall it, you have to.
yep,
Wow,
yep.
that's bizarre.
Ugh. Anyway, so I don't have Photoshop anymore. I don't have you know, Adobe Audition, which is what I was using for years for audio editing. So I'm back to Audacity now for audio editing, which is really slow and clunky, but it's free and it's open source, and you know, it's there. I can use it.
Yeah,
Um, I don't have access to Premiere anymore. I do all video editing on my phone, um, and I find that I use all that stuff a lot less. Like I still have to do audio editing, so I'm using Audacity, but I'm not posting much in the way of videos anymore. And I find that things where I would have, you know, opened up Photoshop just to do some, you know, something really quick, I just don't do that thing. Whatever it was I was going to do in Photoshop, I just don't do it. So if I'm really serious, if I really need some sort of graphical editing program, I will open Clip Studio Paint, which is what I was using to create the comics, which is not as elegant as Photoshop, but it's good enough. But I find I'm just doing a lot less, you know, with graphics and visual, you know, visual media in general.
there's a lovely 70-something-year-old woman that I is basically a coworker, and she told me that you change who you are just about every 10 years, and it it hit me right because I've done that, and I couldn't tell you why or how. It's obviously, we're biological, but yeah, your habits just change. And there's something to it's interesting, your son, he's getting something out of working. He's probably getting the endorphins in his brain off the right neurochemical process for when gets a paycheck. I wish I had that a little bit better. My dad he worked his whole life. Um, and he had a spinal cord injury, so he was quadriplegic for the last 10 years of his life. So the universe or God was like, now you get to watch other people to do things for you because you can't. And
Oh, that's
it's
harsh.
he didn't snap at anyone. It was kind of ridiculous, but um, yeah, you have when we first got married, we lived in an apartment. I was like, I gotta work a lot, obviously. So I did 16-hour days for a while, and so I was doing grocery store, working produce department, and working in an individualized home. There was two autistic women. One guy built like a football player with a traumatic brain injury who would get physical. The police knew where the house was. It was that bad. It's really stressful. But and then once a really handicapped guy in a wheelchair, so you had to do everything for him. But so I was doing that full time, and then the grocery store part time. After a while, I wanted actual time to think and do things on my own. So, but I still sort of beat myself up for not working more. So, but we'll see. Ideally, I get into plumbing, and I've been saying this for a few years because it's hard to hard to not make money with that, and I can figure it out. And I appreciate like the trades and blue collar mines a lot more. I grew up with them. Like the more liberally, when I went to school for my bachelor's, I got into like that heightened upper crust elitism. And even my blue collar dad said he thought it made a good difference in me. Um, I think it did. My ability to write and speak, it kind of just yanked that out of me. So it's funny, when I was in second grade, I was in the advanced English class, and my daughter's vocabulary is pretty impressive sometimes. So it was there, but you had to do a book report, and I got so nervous about that I puked on the bus on the way to the school,
Oh,
and so
wow.
kind of got down to I stayed in the regular.
Well, Parker, in answer to your question, I edit videos on my phone using CyberShot Power Director. And I do pay for it. And really, the only thing that paying for it gets me is that they take the watermark out of the video. But I have not been posting videos much recently. I've much more been focused on writing. So while Benjamin is away dealing with parental duties, I will say that I post to Substack every Tuesday and Thursday. My blog there is called Gen X Science Fiction and Futurism. And I the accounts that I read there, they tend to be on the right, like on the cultural right. And in the email that I read from JD or Aesthetic Warp Shell at the beginning, he said that the algorithms tend to push people to the right and down, and Substack is largely algorithm free in terms of curation. Like, if you follow somebody, you see their posts, and you see every post of every person you follow in the order that they were posted. So it's not some algorithm behind the scenes deciding what it is that's it's going to scroll past your eyeballs. And what I notice is that the right wing accounts that I read, I encountered the term dissident right, and they're not dissident. They're not dissenting from the left or from the mainstream. They're dissenting from the mainstream right or the normie right. And I would say that this, my experience on Substack, I wouldn't say it's pushing me right, but it's exposing me to, to thinkers who take my thought processes to the right and up, as opposed to the right and down, which is what YouTube or X or any other algorithmically curated platform seems to do. There's a guy I follow there. I wouldn't necessarily call him right wing, but he goes by the handle Gerwinder, and he posted something the other day. He said, if you read something online that outrages you, it was probably meant to outrage you. And I think that's right. It's not an accident that you just stumbled across something that really raised your hackles. Some algorithm somewhere that knows something about you said, oh, here's a good one. This will get him going. All right.
Yeah, I was able to hear all that. Few things
Good.
came up.
Go ahead.
Um, I My YouTube algorithm doesn't do that to me. It might be because I made my account, I guess, in 2006, and the amount of videos I've watched maybe is too much of an average to get it there. But um, hmm. And then when it comes to letting the algorithm play you, the more you scroll, if I find myself scrolling for more than 30 seconds, I reset and think different app, do the dishes. Um, I don't know why I don't. I mean, I do get some Fox News basic things, but it's just maybe if I keep clicking Fox News, I'll get to the flat Earth stuff. Um,
So it's not taking you down the rabbit hole to Crazy Town.
yeah. What was the other thing? My wife actually, I had mentioned this in some other post or something. she made a choice where people do, I don't want to see this content. So she knows that the algorithm will stop showing it if you keep scrolling quicker. She's a TikToker,
Ah.
talks a lot of tick. Yeah. So if she's marinating in that, and then I'm marinating in Steven Crowder, Tim Cast, Viva Barnes, um, Robert Barnes, uh, it's when something comes up that's, oh, that's not true. It can be a long process of, if not in the moment, talking about it later in a calm time. It can be pretty stormy.
Well, YouTube knows that during lunchtime, I want to watch probably the first one or two segments of Breaking Points. And it knows that if I turn the TV on first thing in the morning, I want some sort of nature video, like, a running stream or something, just because I tend to get up before the sun comes up. And I'd rather have, a babbling brook lighting the room than just turn on the overhead lights. And then at night, it knows that I want to watch either like astronomy videos or AI news. And yeah, it's given me, and it also like the anti woke, anti feminist, pop culture people like Critical Drinker and I was going to say Red Letter Media. That's not their jam. Midnight's Edge. They're ruining Star Wars. They've ruined Marvel. I I don't rant about that stuff, but I do take in content on that. And yeah, that's about it. The thing that astounds me though is that more media gets uploaded to YouTube every second than you could ever watch. And yet, as you're scrolling through looking for something to watch, they just show you the same tiles for the same videos over and over and over again. It's like they've got 20
Yeah.
videos that they're willing to show you, unless you know what it is you want, you do a search. But supposedly, in the whole time that I've been searching, thousands and thousands of videos were uploaded. Why not show me some of those?
Yeah. I was upset the amount of things or channels that I subscribe to, like you said, like show me their posts. I think it used to work more like that, but it definitely has gotten to work the more crappy way it has been.
So Parker says Ben might be on the crunchy to alt right pipeline. You don't sound very alt right to me. To me, alt right is juvenile, confrontational, like aggressive, and usually anonymous. And here you are, with your name and face on screen.
Yeah. Well,
Not very
wasn't
alt
was
right.
was alt-right a term coined by the people on the other side, or was that, well, I am alt-right?
I don't know. My guess
Because
would be that it was a self appellation that then got turned into an insult. But given the
yeah,
character of the alt right, they would own it.
yeah, Michael Malice is, I think he wrote. I tried to listen to that book, and could not get into it. I appreciate his thoughts on a lot of things. He has a sense of humor, which is important to me. I find that people with a good sense of humor are also good at being able to do both, multiple perspectives of things. And obviously, stand up is, I think, pretty, comedians are important for culture as far as making you laugh about something and saying, "Oh, you went there with your brain." You just acknowledge the hypocrisy in it. It's hard to describe how that works. I don't know if you've heard someone, it's just another thing with like Tim Pool and Ian Crossland on the show. Um, it's good that Ian's on there because he will say, "Hey, what about this?" And they do sort of like help each other stay, um, like a child at heart, and they joke around with each other in a nice way, I think. Um, the other thing I was gonna add was, Breaking Point's headline was just an outright. I don't know why they did it like that because they said that he took money. I mean, it's true, but he didn't know it was from Russia. But even if he did, I guess, would that be fine?
Well, I
But
think the
apparently it
point
was like,
that Sagar and Crystal was making was that, look, we're in this business. We know you don't get an offer to do one video and $100,000.
yeah,
That just doesn't happen in the straight up business world. There's no the return on investment doesn't work. That's clearly
Yep.
somebody with deep pockets and no need to make a return behind the wheel. And you ask who is paying, and they gave you an obviously fake, resume for somebody who doesn't exist. You can't find any evidence for the existence of this person online, and yet you did the videos and you took the money. So
Yeah.
I think it's entirely fair. Now, if the Russian government like openly contacted me and said, "Hey, we'll pay you $100,000 to make a video," I'd say sure. I might call the FBI or the State Department and say, "Hey, I got this offer, and unless you tell me not to, I'm taking the money because I really need it."
Oh, that would be a good way to do it. Be the one to contact them first.
Oh yeah, get out
Um,
ahead of it for sure.
the other thing that doesn't make sense with watch and see. It's a sketch, but I remember the phrase. Yeah, I think Hannah Claire is awesome. I don't get much grifter vibes from her.
I
She's
don't know who that
also
is.
she's a main Hannah Claire Brimlow. She's a main like she's pretty much on every night with Tim Pool.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I forget Tim Pool. Oh yeah, he has a few occasions where he gets really upset if someone breaks the YouTube rules because if you any calls to DEATH. Oh, I also heard 10 minutes in, you have to wait 10 minutes in your video and it's before you swear or use any bad word and the algorithm won't be as much of a dick. So I noticed you used the one in the beginning,
Well,
but
I'm demonetized. I have
right,
no
you're gone now.
I have
They
no
did you in
incentive
good.
to obey.
Crap. What was I saying? So Hannah Claire. Oh
Well,
yeah, so he has
you sounded like you were going to mount some defense of Tim Pool for
yes.
participating.
Here it goes. I will say what he has said. Um, it looks like, and he has said that financially, the IRL podcast, the one that starts at 8 and goes for 2 hours, is not much of a profit. So he's doing the griftery stuff during the day with like any video about whatever to fund that because he has said that he thinks culture is valuable to cultivate and that the left has been owning that and the right was asleep at the wheel as far as humor, shows, culture. I think I would probably agree that most of that has been like exemplified with the left and their values come through. It's like a children's book. Like here's our values. Try to absorb them indirectly. So he does want to. He has a lot of other investments that are interesting. He's got there's multiple shows. There's another. It's Pop Culture Crisis that I think also isn't making it. It's not sustaining itself as far as its intake from YouTube ad revenue. And he's can't remember some of the other things there, but there's been times where a guest will he'll have to stop the show and he loses a crap ton of ad revenue then, and he'll only have the show on the website. Um, and there's been a couple, 2 or 3 times where he got really frustrated that that happens, and he's like, I'm not sure if I'm going to keep doing this. So that I also wonder he has a multiple lawyers, and what it sounded like is that he didn't make that decision. He didn't investigate that specific. Oh, they're gonna give us this money, RT, and we're gonna set up with tenant media. That he didn't look at every detail. Maybe one of his lawyers looked at it and said, "Oh, bunch of money, why not?" So, but Sagar and Crystal, I almost entirely agree with everything they said.
When RFK was still a candidate, this is I think over a year ago. They had him on the show, and Crystal just was.
Yeah,
I didn't see
she was
the
a little
interview,
rabid.
but yeah, and on the vaccine issue,
Yeah,
and lots of people, not lots of people, a few people who have heard me say nice things about that show in the past, wrote to me and said, "Oh, I would never ever listen to those people. They're terrible." And by those people they mean crystal on that one topic. But they just
Yeah.
generalize, they totalize to, this person has a bad take on something that's important to me, therefore they are a bad person and not worth listening to on
Yeah.
any issue. Um, I didn't try to talk anybody out of that. I'm not. It's a show that I like. I tune in not as regularly as I used to, but I still keep up with it, and I don't owe it to the show to proselytize for them. So if somebody wants, if they have a special motivation to be uncharitable because of a take on one special issue, well, so it goes. It's
Yeah.
not up to
I
me to
think
correct that.
I think people are understandably scared of someone saying that vaccines are all bad, basically. I mean, he doesn't entirely say that, I don't think. Um, I've listened to enough of RFK stuff to where I appreciate it, and the one that makes sense to me is the metals. They cross the blood-brain barrier and to train your immune system to recognize a threat is to trigger the immune system, and the metals do that, aluminum. But then I was talking to our doctor recently. I think it's not entirely necessary to have metals in a vaccine now, but anyway, that crystals. She definitely has a certain like painful nasaliness with that interview and with other things when she gets really frustrated. I was surprised their coverage of the RFK endorsement of Trump. It was the first show where I was like, wow, I guess maybe I don't entirely love you guys. I would pretty much
What
put
was the
it
take?
on
I don't
during my
remember.
lunch break.
How do they frame it?
Um, from what I remember, they didn't acknowledge how unprecedented it was, and it was more of just and acknowledge the things the Democrats have done over the years, and more just said, "Hey, he's crazy. I thought he was crazy, and he lost his mind." There's another interview I watched on the Libertarian channel, Reason,
Mm-hmm.
with a a guy who's maybe a little older than me and a woman, um, and they had that same fear of like the fear had gotten them in a spot to where they had to like really press him, and um, I felt like they got a little silly.
You say the fear. What is the fear?
The fear of vaccines are not entirely perfect, because if you have kids and the idea is out there for other parents to be like, oh, I guess I won't do that. Your kid's at risk. It's the same, the dynamic during COVID, obviously. Um, your choices are risking my life. It's understandable based on that logic that I'm going to be upset with you and maybe worse. So, yeah, I didn't take the vaccine. I may have if I was forced, but I didn't feel good about it the way it was working. So your podcast helped a little bit there. One thing you said was if you're learning about the details of a technology in the context of like a conspiracy, it's not you. That's just a kind of a flag, like back off a little bit.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. If you're learning any technical subject um, in the form of some contrarian, position, and you didn't know anything about it before, and all you know about it is how it's evil, or
yeah,
how it's some very distorted by mainstream or by professional perceptions. Unless you're going to go to basics and really educate yourself in a topic, from non-biased sources or from non-ideological sources, best just
yeah.
to you don't have to have an opinion on everything. It's just not necessary. You don't have to have some solid conviction on every question that people get upset about.
Unless you're forced to take it,
Yeah, I mean,
case you
if
would
you
have to
if you are
know.
taking the vaccine because somebody said, take this shot or you're fired, well, then you don't have to know anything about vaccines in order to know that that's illegitimate. My
Yeah.
body, my choice. Wasn't that the slogan? you know?
Yeah. So Chris Martenson, I was following him closely toward the end of my climate change obsession, peak oil and all that, and that's how I found you. I searched John Michael Greer on Apple Podcasts, and one of yours came up, and
Oh,
but Chris Martenson, once COVID happened, all the questions he was asking I thought were important, and that's kind of like the conspiracy theorist mantra is I'm just asking questions. The amount of detail he went in about those questions and the amount that those weren't responded to anywhere else didn't help me want to take it and trust people. But that's also like Sam Harris said once, if you start multiple fires, you can't put them all out. It's kind of like his debate analogy. Um, but I think it was Peter Hotez didn't want to debate some guy on Joe Rogan. And that bummed me out. That would have been entertaining.
well, I don't know who the Hotez person is that you're talking about. I just did not
I-
follow the COVID drama at all.
Yeah, it was interesting.
I just didn't care.
You made a choice to stop banging your head on like culture war stuff, and it was like, but I need to do that somewhere, so I struggled.
Oh, there's no shortage of people talking about it. I mean, you didn't have to go far to find some replacement.
Right. Yeah.
Well, hey, we've just crossed the 1 hour mark. I don't have to go right now, but we should be looking for the exit.
Yeah. My butt feels that. It
And
was
you've eaten
nice
up
to
several
talk with you.
times over the course of this conversation. All right. Well, thanks to Parker for providing some action in the chat here. Apparently, there's 5 people watching, but the others are maybe on their phones. Maybe it's just not convenient to say hey in the chat. But thanks to everybody who watched. Oh, here's Yukon JG who gives us the thumbs up via the chat. Oh,
Oh, there
nice,
it is. I didn't see
nice
that the
user
whole
pick.
time.
No, he just posted it just now. Oh, you mean the chat in general?
I had the tab on private chat because it was
I see.
defaulted to that. I didn't know that I could have went over there.
Oh
That
well.
would have helped my engagement.
I
Yeah,
put
good to
most of
see
Parker's
Parker again.
chats up on screen anyway. Yeah. I used to do fairly regular, I mean, you know this, I'm talking to the other people who are watching, fairly regular, just sort of streaming sessions while I was drawing the Geb comic strip. It took hours and hours, so I would just fire up a YouTube, stream and just chat with people as I was working. And I think you came in there a lot, and Parker was there regularly. Ed in Montreal showed up a lot for that. But there was a guy in Poland, gosh, I forget his name. Um, he was always drunk.
Was he the
And
investor guy?
yeah, yeah. Do you
Like
remember his
stock
name?
market talk? No.
Anyway, sometimes things that he would say in the comments would get the videos, like get me in trouble with YouTube.
Totally.
Like I got a 30
Yeah.
day ban one time for something he said in the comments. I was like,
Yeah.
can't do that anymore.
YouTube's a free speech space.
Mm, let me tell you. All right. Well, hey Benjamin, it is good to catch up with you. So
Yeah, take care, sleep well, and all that stuff.
I wish you
Oh,
well.
bye bye.